Hello everyone and welcome to the EMCC Global Providers Summit. I'm delighted to be co-hosting with our session today with the Royal New Zealand Air Force. How exciting for us all. With this session that's focusing in on mentoring in the military. So I'm sure that you're very excited to hear from the Air Force in moments from now, but just a short introduction so that you know who you've got in the room with you today for this dialogue session. So my name's Lucy Dakin. I'm the EMCC representative for the summit in the APAC region, and I'm also the global head of coaching for Grant Thornton International. And I'd like to welcome you all into this exciting session with the introduction of your dialogue session hosts, who are very smartly dressed in their military attire, as you see on screen there. So I've got Flight Lieutenant and Programme Manager Russell Bone. He is the manager of the award-winning and internationally certified Royal New Zealand Air Force Mentoring Programme. Wow, that was a mouthful. And it's an amazing acknowledgement of the RNZAF contribution to mentoring, having the award of the EMCC International Standards Gold level of excellence, which I think is absolutely awesome to have you here in the room today to share some of your learnings and the great success you've had in the military. And Russell's worked in the United States of America, New Zealand in various roles, assisting others to connect and feel a sense of belonging and value. So welcome to you, Russell. We look forward to hearing moments from now. And we also have squadron leader and senior facilitator Andy Armstrong, who's serving as a commissioned officer in the Royal New Zealand Air Force with over 24 years of service in the armed forces. So we're delighted to have you here, Andy. And Andy brings a focus of bringing New Zealand a world-class standard of coaching and mentoring for New Zealanders who aspire for great leadership. So kia ora, hello, welcome. We're all excited to hear about the amazing work you're doing in the Air Force with the mentoring program. So over to you both.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are dialing in from. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really pleased to represent not only the Royal New Zealand Air Force and our mentoring program, but also represent our New Zealand Defence Force, as well as represent New Zealand as a whole. So as Lucy said, and probably as you can tell by my accent, I'm not originally from New Zealand, from the United States, but I married a little Kiwi girl, so which got me into this spot where I am today. So as we kind of get into it a little bit, we're going to be talking about the culture within New Zealand and our Defence Force, for those who may not be familiar with that. As you may or may not know, our Air Force and our program sits within a very diverse culture, both within New Zealand and within our Defence Force. We will be discussing how our diversity, our inclusion, and our biculturalism allows us to benefit, grow, and unlock and achieve success within our program. We also will be discussing our program values and our principles, which is really the backbone of our program here within the Air Force. We will discuss how our values and our principles keep us heading in the right direction and help us to continue to get the accreditation that we do. Thirdly, we'll discuss our success factors that keeps us getting our gold, and that keeps us, for people keep asking us, how are we doing that? How are we so successful while being a military? And then at the end, of course, there'll be a time for questions and wrap up. Through all this this time we have together, and through this whole summit process, we will be in a dialogue with one another. So there will be breakout rooms for each of us after each one of these sections, just so that we can have a discussion and we can learn off you, and everybody can learn off each other through this time. But before we move into that, I wanted just to kind of start this off with some poll questions, and hopefully they will be launched here shortly. And if you can just on your screen, just kind of answer some of these questions, what best just describes you. I think there's a couple of questions there, and how you represent yourself as a mentor or a coach. So far it's good to see that we have a little bit of a variety amongst us and learning that will go through this. So thank you so much for participating. A lot of the times within our program, we do a lot of facilitating and a lot of back and forth. So we will be asking a lot of questions and getting you to kind of answer some of this and figure out just where you are in life and within your mentoring and coaching. Cool. It looks like, I guess, 50% are our internal coach or mentor, and the rest of us are either a training provider or a leader within our organization, or even just an external coach. So yeah. So thank you so much for that. Thank you much for being part. And if you can just also maybe in the chat room, just write down what takeaway you would value most from attending this session. It doesn't matter what it is. What would make this session a success for you? What would you like to learn out of this session? Will it be more about New Zealand, more about our program, more about just mentoring and coaching, or how we combined mentoring within a military concept? What would be the best takeaway to make this session valuable for you? Yeah, cool. Just knowing about how the mentoring, just how it works. Cool. We like to, that'd be good. Hopefully we can answer that question for you. Yeah, and just how effective we can be within this and how effective it is. How effective is mentoring and coaching within a military context? Just because, yeah, we work in a very hierarchical environment. And so how does mentoring work, and how effective is it with all that in mind? So thank you so much for adding those. And feel free to add to those later on as you feel like. If we're missing something, feel free to add to that chat.
Thanks, Russell. Appreciated. And I've actually just realized we've got a really eclectic mix of accents in the room. You've got Russell with his smooth American accent with those undertones of Kiwiness. And now you've got a really broad, thick Kiwi accent, and mine is probably very typical, and probably the one that probably speaks the best English of all of us, Lucy. So thanks, Lucy. You're the best measure, I would think. But ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to focus here for a moment on culture, and importantly, when we get to a breakout room later on, is how culture is influencing your practice as a coach. Or how is culture influencing you as a training provider or a training designer? But the quote that I've got up there, you'll see the English translation at the bottom. He aha te mianu o te aho, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. And this is quite a well-known Māori proverb within New Zealand, and Māori being an official language of New Zealand. Importantly for us, I think I speak on behalf of you because I know this is very relevant for me when the compass needle swung this way towards me with my own professional development. It was quite self-centered in some respects because I wanted a coaching credential, but I think you'll agree with me that what is for the benefit of, it is for the people. So your skills and your knowledge as a coach, as a supervisor, or whatever your practice is, it's for the benefit of the people. And stay with us too, because at the end, as Russell said, I'm going to share with you our big eight success factors. And I'm sure there'll be a couple of insights there and a couple of things that you can take away to help make your programs even more successful, or perhaps even your own practice as an internal or external coach. Just referring to the map there at the bottom. So New Zealand is nestled right at the bottom of the Southwest Pacific. And just to dispel a few myths, at low tide, no, you cannot walk from Auckland to Sydney. New Zealand is its own country. We're not another state of Australia. We're pretty quick to point that out in any sports competition at least. But one thing I hope you do notice with this image is that nestled down here in the Southwest Pacific, we're surrounded by a number of other Pacific nations. And the diversity of those Pacific nations is perhaps best represented in our cosmopolitan cities, particularly in Auckland, where it's quite visual. And indeed, within our own organisation, within the Royal New Zealand Air Force or the New Zealand Defence Forces as well, we can see this diversity playing out. So for us, culture does influence our mentoring program. And I'm going to share with you in a moment a couple of ways about how that is influencing our program. Russell, if I could just go on to the next slide for a moment. One of the things, and I should point out here too, especially if there's anyone in Europe that's tuned in or perhaps listening to the recording at some stage, I'll plan to visit Europe next year because there's a very important event on in France. It's the Rugby World Cup. We've just hosted the Women's Rugby World Cup here in New Zealand, and I'll soon be seeing the men's version of it next year. But at the beginning of our rugby games, particularly our national sports, you'll often see what is called haka. Now, haka can be represented in all sorts of different ways, but typically haka is a challenge. It's a challenge to a foe, but it can also be represented in other ways and be delivered in different contexts. Haka is a part of our Indigenous culture, Māori culture, and it is something we certainly embrace. And what I'd like to share with you next is a video which is taken in Turkey, actually. And I just wonder if I can share that video right now, Dilla, and if I can talk over it as we go. So haka can be used not only for confrontation and challenge, it can be also used for ceremonial events, for celebrations, or can be even used in funerals as well. So it has many different contexts, but in any way, it's a way to display pride. It's a way to display strength and indeed unity. And in this example here, taken in Turkey, we're representing or commemorating our fallen and our dead. Thanks, Dilla. Appreciate that. So, team, that was just a visual example of how we, as an organisation, take our Indigenous culture with us wherever we go, on the international stage or otherwise. But the key thing here, I guess, is how is our culture, our Indigenous culture, our biculturalism influencing our mentoring program? And there are probably a couple of ways that I can offer here for you at the moment. So, for example, when we begin our programs of learning, our workshops, we will often start with what's called a karakia. And a karakia is an expression in Māori as a chant or a prayer, which can be done at different sorts of ceremonial events, or the beginning of a conference even, or before we dine or eat a meal. So sometimes we will start our learning opportunities, our learning occasions with karakia. Another way that culture influences our mentoring program is with our matching considerations. So we're hyper flexible when it comes to matching people with a preference for perhaps someone with fluency in te reo Māori, the language, or perhaps there's another reason why someone would like to be partnered with someone who is has subject matter expertise in our Indigenous culture. So there's a couple of ways where culture, the New Zealand culture, is actually influencing our mentoring program. As I mentioned earlier, our organisation is made up by quite a wide variety of different ethnicities and different backgrounds. And so for that reason, it's really important to stick to our values, and we certainly value inclusiveness. So having people to be able to participate regardless of your ethnicity or your background or your heritage is really, really important. There's probably something else too that you may well be thinking of, is how on earth can a mentoring program happen in a culture that is typically hierarchical and structured by rank? Well, perhaps maybe one of the better examples is when we run our workshops. We actually attend our workshops in civilian clothing. So we break down those barriers that might exist through rank and seniority. So that's done in a deliberate way so we can have some really good open conversations. Another one too might be represented around gender too. So gender considerations play a very important part. So there's no restrictions for participating in our program, whether you're male or female. And for that matter, it might be a case of, once again, being flexible around people's wishes when that comes to partnering with a mentor or a mentee, so we can help that process along. So what I wanted you to have a think about, I'm really keen to get your feedback on this as we go to the next slide and into the breakout rooms, is just to reflect back on your own culture and how is your culture influencing the way you coach, the way you mentor, the way you develop your programs, the way you design your programs? What are some of those key considerations that are playing out? If I was to leave you in the breakout room for up to 10 minutes just to have a conversation amongst yourselves, and it might be a good idea to think about a spokesperson that could come back with a couple of key points, which would be really, really interesting for all of us. So yeah, go to the breakout room, have a think about what are the cultural considerations that are influencing your coaching and mentoring. We'll leave you for up to 10 minutes to break out and have that conversation, and then join us again with your spokesperson to pass on a few insights. Would be absolutely wonderful. Thanks very much. Dilla, Lucy, I'll leave that over to you.
Just curious to know from the first room that I think had Donna in it, is there someone from your room that would like to share a headline?
Yeah, so essentially Carlos works for a non-for-profit institute, and Cassie is in the private sector aspect. But from Cassie's perspective, talking about Asia specific regarding the age and gender difference is something that she will need to work on. She mentioned that's something that's what she's keen to learn, having been in coaching for 1 to 2 years. So culturally, those differences for as highlighted was more about age and gender, whereas Carlos because of his age and his experience and in the industry he's in, he doesn't see that culturally there's anything for him to necessarily concern or consider whilst coaching that needed to be highlighted. With Donna and ourselves, just mentioned the fact that in the NZDF, as Russell and Andy mentioned, regarding that we don't necessarily know who we're going to be coaching or mentoring. But the thing is just to take into consideration that of those differences. And as Donna mentioned, the key takeaway was it's all about setting that agreement at the beginning, that contract or whatever that you want to call it, that both parties understand fully what is within the realms and what's not within the realms. And culturally, you may want to discuss that, whether that's gender, age, or religion, as part of that agreement setting. So that's our takeaway.
Great, thank you, Mark, for that overview.
Thank you.
Just conscious of the time, wonder, Kerry, if we could just hear a headline from your room, if that's okay.
Look, thanks, and I just think it's interesting just hearing across there the range of accents we've even got within the New Zealand Defence Force. So fantastic to see that piece of inclusion and diversity coming across. But look, Subhan and I had a really good chat around the Indonesian piece, and he works for the telecom piece. But we really linked in around that I guess cultural piece, and really the karakia, which is the prayer, and bringing us together in the cultural space is something that I think we can all link together on. But yeah, what I did like there is there is differences in our scheme. So as a manager, there's a sort of a bit of expectation that you'd be involved in the mentoring, and although it's voluntary, there's a lot of work going on in the background to keep those schemes going, and definitely partnering between the schemes as well, which is great. Reverse mentoring and innovation mentoring is huge in Indonesia, where the bottom, the new people to the organisation are often our innovators, and they can teach us a lot. So really that's what we were covering. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Kerry, and thanks for that summary from your room. So I'm going to hand back to now Russell and Andy to take us further into the mentoring programme at RNZAF.
Cool, thanks, Lucy. I just want to kind of a little bit continue the conversation around our culture, and as has been mentioned a bit, is the inclusiveness that we show. And historically and currently, we strive to have a very inclusive program where everyone can learn off each other. And as was described earlier, no matter where you come from, we try, no matter your culture or background, we welcome them all. We try to learn off each other. And another, besides this, the culture has been discussed, but also one thing we do is we are very inclusive within our hierarchical ways. As a military, of course, we're very hierarchical. And so the thing is that all ranks are represented within our program, from the very top, which is the Chief of the Air Force, to our very newest aviator, and are all welcome. And as Andy mentioned earlier, when we have our workshops, we come in civilian clothes, so you don't know who's who. You don't know what rank they have. You don't know what their background is. And people just get to know each other for who they are, and which opens up a lot of conversation, talk a lot about values, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But one story I want to share with you was at one of our workshops. One of our things we do at the very beginning of our workshop is we get people to talk about what motivates them, what gets them going in the morning, and then their partner has to listen to what they're doing, but then draw out what they're doing, what they're saying about what gets them up, what their values, what's their purpose, and then you introduce your partner in the workshop. And you have some great stick figure drawings that happen in the workshop, which is really interesting. But the thing is like I said, is that you don't know who you're really talking to or what position they may hold in our program. And the story goes is that a gentleman got up and said, "Hey, this is Mark, da 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 da," and Mark stood up and goes, "Hey, this is so and so. This is Doug, da 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 da." And they introduced each other and about their values or who they are as a person. And by the end of the day, end of the workshop, they finally said, "Well, what do you do?" And Mark answered, I'm the deputy chief of the Air Force. And you could see the other guy, Doug, could just kind of froze up a little bit. It was like, oh, I didn't realize who I was talking to. But we realized through our program is that that's what the goal is just when it unlocks all this potential, unlocks creativity, unlocks that discussion, unlocks the culture. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, what rank you have. That's the culture what we include within our program. And as I mentioned, our Chief of the Air Force, he is one of our sponsors of our program, and he is a part of it. And like as this quote says, he's proud to be a part of this program, which focuses on our Defense Force values of courage, commitment, comradeship, and integrity. And as he goes on to say, they're relevant within mentoring. And that's key for us to have that support. It's key for us to understand, and for all to understand, is that these are the values that we hold, not only from our chief, but all the way down in our program. So a little bit about our program as we kind of transition here. A little bit of our history. We were established as a program in 2008 within our constantly changing military environment. So somebody just had kind of through an innovation program, they wanted to start fostering some of the potential within the Air Force and further develop help people further develop their values while developing their leadership skills as well as their networking. So a couple of our personnel kind of on separate paths kind of like got together and started, saw this untapped potential and realized and then tried to figure out a good way to start unlocking that success. So as described is that the program kind of cuts across rank. It doesn't matter rank, and which is really good for us as a program. We'll talk about a little bit later. And as you can see here is that our history was that we have been acknowledged 3 times by EMCC as a gold accreditation. And unbeknownst to us, when we did, we became the first military in the world and the first organization here in New Zealand to achieve that gold accreditation for a mentoring program, which is a high accomplishment, which made us kind of a few years back, look at our vision and look at our mission statement and realize that, you know, it's not just about us within the Air Force, that we wanted to be, to lead workplace mentoring, not only for here in our Defense Force, but also within organizations within New Zealand, as well as anybody outside New Zealand, within the world, wherever that may be, is that we want to lead workplace mentoring so that no matter who you are, you can unlock and achieve success. And with our mission statement, that kind of goes back to our roots, that when our program was brought together in 2008, that we want to be an innovative program. We want to be on the cutting edge. We want to keep on reinventing ourselves to make sure that we continue to be leaders in this area. And so this kind of leads us to what the principles and values we have as a program that kind of sets us, we feel like sets us apart. And one way is it's a voluntary program. You're not forced to be a part of it. You're encouraged, but it's not forced, which we realize that it brings out the passionate and committed people within our organization. Also, it's mentee-led and mentee-driven, which basically means is that it's not command-driven, it's not mentor-driven. It's where mentees decide where they want to go. They set the goals, and it's the mentor who just journeys alongside them to unlock this success. Also, the mentee it's not compulsion to follow their guidance or to say, do it like this, or when I was your age, I did it like this. They don't have to follow that. It is, like we said, it's very driven by the mentee and what their goals are. We just help in our workshops, we look at how the mentor can help guide or help lead the mentee to unlocking the success, whatever that may look like. And of course, it's a supportive, non-judgmental, constructive process that people go through. And one thing, it's very confidential and a professional relationship. And one thing we know is that we follow a very strict ethical guidelines. So our mentors and our mentees, but our mentors know their boundaries. We help teach that in our workshop, in which the mentors understand, hey, when it comes against a boundary or some area in which they may not know about, they reach out to other stakeholders, either within our organization, within the privacy and confidential type situations. So also, as anyone, it's a safe space to share and to be open. We realize this is that we know that command sometimes is not 100% safe. So within our mentoring program, we realize this is a safe space for all to learn off each other and to journey alongside each other. And also, it's not when you're in the program, it's not performance managed, so that your manager or your leader cannot ask your mentor, how is this person doing? They can't write a review based off what you guys talk about. That's just not how we do it. It's very private. It's between the mentor and the mentee through our program. So those are just some of the main principles and values we have for our program that has led us to where we are today. And what we like to kind of do now is kind of put you back into breakout rooms. And here's your next question. It said, what are the principles and values you hold in your coaching and mentoring? What do you do within your program, or you as an individual coach or a mentor, that holds you strong, that keeps you pointing in the right direction? And so just within your group, and just like last time, if we just have a spokesperson come back and kind of talk about the main principles and values that are discussed within your group, when we come back after maybe 8 minutes this time, after our breakout groups. So if we can go to our breakout groups now, and if you guys just talk about the principles and values you hold in your mentoring and coaching.
So welcome back to the main room, everybody. We're curious and wondering, as always. Headline from each room, and maybe just offer up somebody who wants to share, rather than me calling on people who would like to share a short headline from their room. Just give me a wave.
We had a really great session with Mark, Cassie and Wendy, which was fantastic. But really, from Cassie, just it's that guided learning and making the mentees making themselves a better version of themselves, and really having those targeted actions to reach their objectives, which was great. And Wendy mentioned about reverse coaching, and being able to explore the potential for everyone to really drive themselves forward. So many similarities across the mentoring teams across different countries, and especially around that security of information. The space to talk, and then reflecting back around feelings and how did it make us feel. So yeah, I was pleased with that. So thank you for sharing, everyone.
Great, thank you for that summary. And hi, Wendy. Wendy works for Grant Thornton also. Let's hear from the other room.
Hi, Colin here. We talked about a number of things, but I guess one of the key things is helping your mentee to understand who they are and what their values are, and where do they sit on things. And the scheme itself, having its values, can help for the safe boundaries around that. We just thought values are really important things to have. It's key.
Yeah. So really good insights coming back into the main room now then, around that question that Russell posed. And just wanting to hand back over to Russell and Andy now, just to take us through the next section of your dialogue session.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. Some really nice insights, actually. Colin, that was a cracking one from your team too. Understanding self, understanding your own values and what's driving your motivation and things like that. So a nice conversation to have. So well done, and thank you very much for the engagement too, team. That's fantastic. Look, as we promised, getting towards the end of the slide deck, we wanted to offer our key success factors, what we believe when we reflect back, and what's helped to make this program a pretty good one. So we've got our big 8 that we'd like to offer you, and this might help you with the development of your own internal programs. If you happen to be watching this, it might help you with the development or creation of your own startup, or as well, for that matter. But anyway, if I could offer some of these success factors to you, one of the first things would be, and it's already been mentioned actually, and that's to galvanize the support at the highest level within your organization. So if you can get buy-in from your senior leadership, there's a good chance that you'll be able to follow through and be given the latitude and flexibility to do what you want to do in terms of creating your own internal program of coaching and mentoring. So that would be right at the top of the list. Garner the support of your organization's leaders and go from there. The second point is to make the program voluntary and mentee centric. So the people that are actually guiding the relationship is actually the mentee in this relationship. That's really, really important, and that's backed up on your principles and values and things like that. And the whole thing, as Russell said earlier, is voluntary. It's not a you are told to, it's a voluntary participation, and that's driving some of the success that we see within the Air Force here today. Another factor would be you definitely start small. Perhaps going off the Rome principle, building Rome, it wasn't built in a day. You might have some lofty visions and expectations, but our experience would be to suggest you start small and keep evolving, keep developing. Don't bite off too much of a chunk, but start small. And this started with us back in 2008 with having a couple of like-minded people that saw this example somewhere else and thought, well, what could we do in New Zealand? And that started off just with a small group of people, like-minded, that thought this would be a really good idea, and it grew and grew from there. So start small and keep it really simple to begin with. The fourth one, I should say, is connecting with an external organization. This one really helped us significantly. The organization that we linked into was the New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring Centre. And these guys really had the level of corporate knowledge and expertise that we didn't have. So it's a little bit like going out to find your own mentor. Who's really, really good at this? Who knows what to do? So connecting with an external organization, hands down, helped us to move this idea along in a great way. And we still have these relationships today with the New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring Centre that helped us so many years ago. We've still got a really, really strong connection with them. The fifth one is to really designate someone that has the time, that can put in the effort, that has a degree of passion with the whole idea. So this didn't actually start off as a full-time designation within the Air Force. It started with someone's interest and doing it alongside their own job. Then it started with someone getting having a part-time influence, until today, where Russell is actually a full-time coordinator manager within our program. But yeah, trust me, at some point, it's really going to require the impetus of someone who is designated to coordinate and manage things. And that includes a budget as well. So that certainly helps us with our learning and our education and going overseas, for that matter, to engage in extra learning. So that's been very, very helpful indeed. The next one is to be open to feedback. So this is directly linked to our EMCC competencies. We need to be open to feedback, and when we conduct our workshops and our programs of learning, we're asking for regular feedback. And you'll know, even as a coach, you're looking for feedback, whether or not what you're doing is on track, and whether or not you and your co-creation of what you're out to set to achieve, that it's on track. So you're asking for feedback, and we're continually asking for feedback and trying to respond the best we can to feedback, just to make the program even better. A couple more to go. Understanding culture. Look, I think we've emphasized that already. Is there anything that's influencing the way your program needs to be organized and run? What cultural considerations do you need? And like I said, for the Air Force, there's considerations around hierarchy, there's considerations around gender, there's considerations around biculturalism and things like that. So that's woven into the fabric of the program, and that's what helps to make it a success. And the last one is to be true to your principles and your values. So as an organization and as a governing body for your own internal program, is to understand, hey, what values are really driving us here, and what principles do we need to stand on? And that helps to shape conversations. It helps people to stay on track. It helps to keep the field of vision right in front of you. So yeah, I would say, look, if we were to boil it down and to offer you 8 success factors, these would be some of the key things that really helped us to move along in a positive way. And we're still going today, and things are working really well for us. And as was alluded to just a couple of slides back, a benchmark for that success has really been EMCC recognition, which we certainly value and we're striving for all the time. So it's a little bit like, hey, look, we get some positive praise and some positive feedback through EMCC Gold accreditation, and we keep wanting to go back for more. So it's a little bit of that self-licking ice cream, if you were to use the metaphor. We really want to continue on and get that recognition and those awards. I think if we were to break out for the last time, just for 6 to 8 minutes or so here, we'll be absolutely fine. But I think what we're really interested at this point is having an opportunity to share with everybody else what other success factors might be in your own approach to coaching and mentoring. Or perhaps you're in that training provider role where there are success factors that are working for you currently, because I think sharing some of those success factors might be really useful. And for that matter, what success factors are you proposing that need to be introduced to make this really good? So I'd be really interested in that conversation. If you could break away for a few moments to have that chat and get back to us and share something with the team, that would be absolutely wonderful. Just a few minutes on this one, team. You'll see the timer countdown. We'll get together for a quick debrief at the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the main room. I did get a chance to pop into the breakouts that time around, and just great again to be that fly on the wall and hearing some of those success stories from either coaching or mentoring, just to get a bit more richness of that dialogue back into the main room. Who would like to share from room 1, which I think, Mark, you were in, but it doesn't have to be you that does the sharing piece?
I think so. From Mark and I, we talked about how passion and enthusiasm is a huge success factor, and I think a lot of programs rely on this, and I think the NZDF one certainly does. But also other comments were around resources, both financial and other support to get the program going, and then just understanding other people's issues understanding the issue, and then acknowledging that everybody is different and that trying to give them the skills to grow, and really, I guess, back onto the enthusiasm and passion sort of same on the same concept as that commitment to the team and to the organisation, and then of course to the program.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Donna. Thanks. I definitely feel that as you all talk from the Royal New Zealand Air Force. Let's just duck into the other room that we had, and there was Colin in there, but again, it doesn't need to be Colin that shares, can be anyone from that room.
Hi, this is Cassie. I don't mind share.
Thanks, Cassie.
So we talked about the success factor. I mentioned as a private coach, like to build the trust is show some vulnerability as a coach is quite important. And Wendy mentioned to have the competent coach, and then Colin added to be able to match the coach and coachee, and then to make sure this is some chemistry, this is the right match. That is quite critical. Also, we discussed about to penetrate an organization and then to convince the top management to get support. That's quite critical. And I always got this question, and how to validate how to validate the effectiveness of coaching and mentoring for organization, how to convince the top management, what kind of number we can show. So Colin mentioned there's some work from EMCC on the metrics, and then I think that will be a big support for a coaching mentoring program to be executed in any organization. So this is our discussion.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cassie, and totally agree that buy-in and being able to share that return on investment is super important with the larger organisations, or any organisation for that matter. Mm-hmm. Handing back to Russell and Andy.
Yeah, thanks, team. Thanks that we can continue to learn off you and just dialogue with everybody here. And hopefully the people that are watching later that may be sleeping right at the moment, hopefully you get something out of this and just hearing people's stories about success factors. And we love to hear back from you as well. And we really want to say thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for us, probably morning for some, evening for some, middle of the night for some. And so as we just wrap up, we just want to rehash some of the things we talked about. One was the culture within New Zealand and our Defence Force. Andy discussed a lot of the biculturalism with the Maori heritage that is here, as well as the British kind of colonization that has happened, and how we kind of mix those within our program, as well as the gender, as well as the sex, all the different things that bring up our culture within our mentoring program. Also, we talked about our program values and our principles that kind of keeps us on the straight and narrow, that keeps us going places, and understanding that those values are really important, and that motivates us to keep going, whether it be the commitment or the enthusiasm behind it. What are those values and principles that really keep us going individually and as a program? And the last thing, we talked about our success factors, and Andy took us through that in regards to what has helped us in the past, but also each one of you shared what makes the success for yourself as a mentor or coach, or within your program as yourself. We want to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you so much for your interaction with us today, no matter when and where and how you are tuning in. So thank you for being a part of our discussion today about listening to us of how we mentor within a military context. We're always open for feedback and always open to learn from each and every one of you. So thank you so much. And now we'd like to just kind of open this time up for any questions that may happen. And I guess I'll just turn it back over to you, Lucy, on about the best way to kind of open up for questions here.
Yeah, so we've got around 5 to 10 minutes for any burning questions that you have for either Russell or Andy, or maybe anyone else from the Royal Air Force that are joining the call today. And maybe pop your cameras on so that we can see your faces and hear from you if there are any questions. And if you're more comfortable, you can use the chat function.
Hi, I have a question, and then it is aligned with the how to convince the top management. And may I ask, how does this program start? So who initiated, and then who raised this suggestion to the management, and how you did this persuasion?
A great question, Cassie. And I'm going to turn it over to somebody who's actually here. Colin, who's in the group, is one of the ones who started our program back in 2008. It was part of his idea. It was his vision. And I'm glad that he's joining us to help answer this question. But I really like for you to hear it from the horse's mouth himself. It was him and another young officer that really started this program and convinced our management. So Colin, if you're still around, I'd love for you to kind of share your story and kind of share your thoughts way back when.
Thanks, Russell. So there's a few things happening in parallel. There was a young psychologist who could see the need for this sort of thing and did mention it at a conference, a warrant officer conference, but the warrant officers thought, nah, we do this anyway. But she basically planted a seed At the same time, the Chief of the Air Force was trying to encourage innovation and draw young people and their ideas. And then he introduced the innovation scheme. And separately, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if some of the supervisors that are desk jobs at the moment could team up with somebody younger and just share their experiences and help a young person along? Because there were a lot of people with staff jobs that didn't have any direct reports themselves, and they had time. But on the squadrons and things, the supervisors are really, really busy. So perhaps we could match some people with experience and with some time with younger people. That was the concept, but the Warrant Officer of the Air Force at the time, Keith Gow, was really keen on this, pushing this, and he wanted it wider, and he didn't want to narrow it down to certain mentors and mentees. He wanted it to be open to anybody in the Air Force. And so it even ended up that sometimes the mentor was junior in rank to the mentee, and that was fine, because they brought, as long as they did the course and the process was respected, they could get things out of it. But yeah, there were a lot of key people, and as Andy mentioned, or Russell mentioned, hooking up the New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring Centre right at the start, and also building a key team, a motivated team with the right attitudes, was key.
And I
Brilliant,
think,
thank you.
yeah, I think I would just add to what Colin was saying, and he's being kind of modest in what his response is, because it really was a lot of lead work that Colin had to do towards some senior management. And on the first kind of presentation, and we ran a trial program, it was when the mentees stood up and talked about what they were getting out of the program and how they were starting to learn more and to grow, and how they had learned about a program or connected with this network or whatever that may be. And when the senior leaders heard this young mentee share their story, they were convinced. We had numbers to back it up. We had situations and things to back it up, but it wasn't until the story was shared from the young mentee to the senior management, and they just loved it. They threw the numbers out the door and were just ready to go. And that, I think that's convincing when someone can share a story of how it changed their life and how they unlocked or achieved some type of success. Numbers help, but the stories is what makes it.
Thank you. That's very inspiring. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask Russell something?
Sure.
How is the influence of the military hierarchy in coaching? In the military world, the people has high hierarchy can order to others to do something. That is a success factor?
Yeah, so within our military concept, of course, you have the hierarchy that can order people to do things, and they can tell you to do this or that, or to jump this or cross this bridge, or whatever that situation may be. And that's very transactional learning. And we know within mentoring and within coaching, when we get people to start unlocking different thoughts and unlocking different belief, unlocking success, we realize it's transformational learning. So it's horizontal versus vertical learning. And so when people start growing within themselves, having more confidence within that, that's where the gold is. So yes, we do have coaching within our hierarchy system, and that's needed at times. But within our program, we kind of try to take that off to the side, and we kind of cut through that so that people are growing as individuals and as humans, so that no matter if they stay in or if wherever they go in life, is that they have grown, unlocked some success, and just become a better person. So yeah, not taken away from the hierarchy system and not taken away from that is needed within a military, but probably the best way we do it is we try not to do it within a chain of command or a management command, and so that people are learning more about life, about themselves, so they can just unlock that success.
Good.
Carlos, I might just add something there too, because within our organisation, what needed to have happened is that the organisation needs to be mature enough to admit that mentoring just doesn't happen from the top down. Sometimes mentoring happens from the bottom up. And there's probably no better example than my own. So when I first joined the Air Force's mentoring program, I was paired up with someone junior to me. So while my rank level was here, their rank level was here, but this person was actually my mentor. So we've got to be open-minded enough to accept that there's value in that. And I think that's maybe where our Air Force has had the leap on some other organizations. I don't mean that necessarily, it's just an assumption, but you've got to be open-minded enough to embrace that. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, both. Thank you very, very, very clear for me. Thank you.
And I'll just add my two more cents here, is that we really buy into the EMCC definition of mentoring. What defines it as a mutual learning relationship. And so it's not someone telling someone what to do, which is command. It is a mutual learning of relationship back and forth, and that people are open to be mentored, no matter the rank level, no matter the situation, no matter whatever that may look like. So it's that definition that we have really bought into from EMCC about mentoring.
Great questions in the room. Thank you for those. So as we draw to the close of this mutual dialogue session, I just wondered, before we move into our networking session, if for Russell and Andy, if you could just give us maybe 15 seconds each about any insights that you've had or reflections that you've had from what you've heard from the room, or just hearing your own story played out in this space.
Looks like I'm going first.
Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, look, there is something that came up actually just as Colin was mentioning there, because never underestimate where a small idea could potentially go. Someone has to plant the seed, but don't underestimate how tall that seed could possibly grow. And I think this is a perfect example here where someone had an idea, planted that seed, and we took hold of it. So if you happen to be that person, certainly don't underestimate where your idea could potentially go one day. So that's a key insight, a key takeaway that I've taken from this conversation and just listening to what people have got to say.
I think for myself, understanding and having passion and committed people within your organization or people that you may be coaching and mentoring is the key. And I think when you have buy-in from others, whether if you're an organization having that buy-in from leadership, and as this was discussed in our conversation, of sharing the story of what it means to you to have a mentor, or to share the story and the learnings you have by being mentored by somebody else is the key. I think when people can share their stories, learn off each other, is how we grow the best, and how we learn more about this thing called life, which I think is the key to mentoring.
Great, thank you both, and some great insights, and what a wonderful discussion to hear for us this afternoon in New Zealand and all around the world at different times of the day. I'm sure those that will be wanting to listen to the recordings will also get huge benefit from this session. So thank you once again, and on behalf of EMCC Global, thank you for leading such a rich discussion for us all. Thank you.